We thought we'd roll out a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity. Music.
Inter.
Worldwide.
Inter.
Worldwide.
Ciao, buongiorno a tutti ragazzi, wherever you are and whatever time it is in the world. I am joined today by one half of the craziest couple in the cultural streaming universe. It is the host of the Cultural Connection podcast, Alex Donno, who also does a lot of great work at the moment for Inter Miami. So it is a great honor and pleasure to have him on Inter Worldwide to preview what's going to be one hell of a crazy season. Alex, thanks for joining us here, man.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to talk to you again, Anthony. I hope you and yours are doing well. I'm just happy we have Calcio coming back this weekend.
And being an Inter fan and seeing our boys still kick a football around right up until the end of the Europa League season, we really haven't had an off season, have we, brother?
No, it really feels like it's been a few weeks because it has been a few weeks. I mean, from the Europa League final to that big summit that Inter management had with Conte a couple of days after that to decide his future, transfer reports ever since then. It really feels like yesterday that unfortunately they lost that match to Sevilla, but it doesn't feel like a long time ago at all.
Yeah, I just got off watching the Bayern Munich Schalke game, which I'm sure our friend Richard Carmen's going to have one hell of a post-match video or podcast to talk about that. Oh, man, that was rough. But it's good to see football back in all avenues and getting a taste of that and some Liga N this morning as well. It was really good. Before we do jump into the Serie A predictions for our teams, Club Internacional de Football Miami is making waves all over the MLS. And because I've got an opportunity to have you on here, Alex, I just thought take a little bit of time to tell our listeners just what you do for Inter Miami, which is owned by David Beckham, and just recently made a huge signing of Gonzalo Higuain. So they're doing bits, aren't they, man?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I work on their team broadcasts on the radio side and sometimes TV, doing pregame shows, halftime, and postgame analysis. And it's really been incredible these past few months. I started with them right after they returned from the COVID break. So I wasn't working with them for their first two matches. They played two games. The season is different from the way it is in Europe. So they started in March. They played two matches. Then we had, about 3 months off with the pandemic. And then I've been working with them since they returned over the summer. And it's been a lot of fun. The team struggled out of the gates. They lost their first 5 matches in franchise history, but have picked up a couple of wins and a few draws in the handful of games they've played since. And yeah, you mentioned it, reinforcements have been on the way. And really, it's been a lot of Juve to Inter Miami transfers because, one of the first bigger signings that they made in the last within the last month was Blaise Matuidi, who came over to help reinforce the midfield. He's played in 3 matches since coming over to Miami, played incredibly well in his debut, and came on as a substitute in his second game, started the third game, hasn't quite recaptured the magic yet of the debut, but he's played pretty well overall. And then just finalized today, in fact, the day we're recording this, so maybe some people will hear it later, but on Friday, finalized the signing of Gonzalo Higuain. And Anthony, I can't tell you how badly Inter Miami needs his help up front, because probably the most inconsistent position that Inter Miami has been at the number 9 position. They've got a lot of youth there. So to bring in someone of, the proven quality of Gonzalo Higuain, who I think is going to do really well in Major League Soccer in the United States, it's a huge signing. I think it's going to be probably 7 days from this weekend. I think the Saturday, the 27th, I think the date is likely when he's going to make his debut for the club. So I'm looking forward to seeing him add some goal scoring.
Man, it's going to be huge. You're telling me that the team has struggled up front, and what a way to stamp your authority in terms of getting a player that needs to fit a system that has a tweak up front. I mean, Gonzalo Higuain, inconsistent in his later years in Serie A, but you can't blame him because, I mean this with as little arrogance as possible. It's not exactly a tough transition for him coming into the MLS. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but he probably will have a lot more time on the ball and a lot more opportunities than being closed down quickly as Juventus's third choice number 9. But, at the end of the day, good luck to him and good luck to everybody at Inter Miami, and to you, Alex. Keep doing what you're doing. It's fantastic to just see football all over the world still get a rise, and all the help from the big names in the big leagues can only lead to bigger and better things. Serie A, I can't believe it's back. We're going to go down the Uncle Sharma route because he released a video yesterday or this morning where he went backwards and started with relegation, and I like that. So we're going to do that if that's all right with you, Alex.
Of course.
We've had 3 teams coming up from Serie B. One of them looks a little bit more well put together and a little bit more excited, and that would be Filippo Inzaghi's Benevento. And we've also got Crotone and Spezia coming up as well. For me, I think Benevento is going to survive the drop, Alex, but I don't think the other 2 teams look like Serie A ready teams. I mean, COVID was really hard on some of the bigger clubs in the world. The restrictions that are being imposed on the smaller clubs are huge, and I think that's where these 2 clubs will fall short. So for my bottom 3 this season, I really hope I'm wrong with the last one, but I've actually got Sampdoria to be relegated in 18th, Spezia at 19, and Crotone at 20. For Sampdoria, I just think, the rumors of Keita Balde arriving just this morning, being announced on a 1 million loan from Monaco, might help them out a bit. But last season, they just looked very bad and very demotivated. So did Genoa as well, but I just think Sampdoria looked even worse. I hope I'm wrong, but I do actually think that they stand a chance of getting relegated this season if they get a couple of bad injuries. Alex, what do you think is going to happen down in the cellars, down in the basements of Serie A this season, mate?
We're pretty much in agreement, and I'll say that when Jerry and I did one of our preview episodes this week, I was a little bit non-committal on relegation only because I like to be able to see the newly promoted teams play for a few weeks before I really make up my mind. But the more time that I think about it and the more time that I study the squads, I do agree with you. I think Benevento has a decent chance of staying up. They had a historic run through Serie B, and I like the work that Pippo Inzaghi has done there. So I think Benevento, and we kind of see this trend that typically the 3 teams that are promoted, you tend to see one of them do enough to stay up, and then the other 2 just drop right back down to Serie B. So if that pattern continues, I would certainly see Benevento as having the best chance of staying up. I think that Spezia and Crotone are probably both toast, and they go right back down to Serie B. I think you make a lot of sense in what you said about Samp. Maybe the one man that can save them is our friend Antonio Candreva, who is that's a squad that he is being linked to. I don't know if he'll end up going there, but it would be interesting if he has a nice season there. But I think my pick to be the 3rd team relegated is Udinese. They've been kind of flirting with that for a couple of seasons, and they're likely to say goodbye to Rodrigo de Paul this season. So and maybe a part of me would like to see them go down because they can be pretty painful on the eyes. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Spezia, Crotone, and Udinese being the other team going down. They'll probably be 18th place. So yeah, I think I see those 3 dropping.
Nice. In terms of predicting mid-table, I'm actually someone who thinks that predicting mid-table is impossible in every single league in the world, let alone Serie A. So rather than actually predict mid-table, we might just have a short little chat about some of the teams that are going to really sit in that meaty curve of the ladder this season. So I'll actually go to you first, Alex. Are there any teams that are going to occupy that mid-table section that you'd like to just make a comment on? Like, for example, I think Rocco Commisso and Fiorentina will do better this season. They had the team and they had a squad that should have improved and should have done a lot better last season. But, I'm going to say it was just a little bit slow to adapt. So I expect them to be flirting around that 9th and 10th spot, just missing out on European football as well. Maybe not just missing out, but around about that top end right there. While I'd also make a comment and echo that, Udinese, if it's not going to be Sampdoria, it's going to be Udinese that goes down at the other end, or possibly Genoa as well, as more than once or twice last season, they were absolute whipping boys, and not just for Inter. So what do you care to comment about that nice little mid-curve of the Serie A table?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Fiorentina because they're always interesting to me. I think they've got an enjoyable squad. They're easy on the eyes. I'm not really a fan of Iachini, coaching that squad. I wonder if I feel like they can do better. I wonder if he even makes it through the season. Fiorentina, I had when we were making our preseason picks for top 6, which we kind of extended into 7 and 8. I had always wondered, because I think Fiorentina is also, to their credit, had a good transfer window. So I was kind of wondering if that could be a team that could maybe make a jump, towards like a Europa League spot. But the more I think about it, I just think there's so much competition for those Europa League spots when you kind of wonder, Lazio is going to be right on the bubble between Champions League and Europa League. And I'll save some of that conversation because I'm sure you want to talk about the top 5 or top 6. But Fiorentina is a squad that I look out for. I think they'll probably end up, around the 9 or 10 range this season, sort of flirting with Europa League because they seem to be a squad that underachieves based on their talent. I could see Parma taking a little bit of a step back this season after their coaching change. I could see Sassuolo maybe even taking a little bit of a step up. One team that we usually don't mention in the mid-table conversation, but I think are going to be there this season, are Roma. I mean, I think Roma could really, really struggle, because Zaniolo, another knee injury for him, so he's going to miss, I could imagine, potentially the entire season with an ACL. And I kind of hope that they don't rush him back because he's so important for their future. He's so important for the Azzurri's future. I think that the deal that they just made, sending Dzeko to Juventus and bringing in Milik, I can understand why they would want to cash in on an older player like Dzeko. But for this year, it's a downgrade, I think, to go from Dzeko to Milik. And then with Zaniolo being out, and, I know that they did just, make a nice signing at center back with Kumbula, but I could really see Roma end up, being anywhere between 7th to 10th this year, depending on how things go. And I'll give a little bit of credit to Torino because they seem to be revolutionizing, their squad with a lot of transfers after kind of sticking to the status quo last year. So maybe they take a step up. Overall, I think you hit it on the head when you said it's really kind of hard to predict where some of these mid-table teams are going to fall. But I do find it interesting when you look like a team like Roma, who I think a lot of us are now expecting to go from a squad competing for Champions League the last couple of years to now a squad that could be anywhere from maybe 7th to 10th.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree with Torino. They really did revolutionize their side, bringing in, some really decent looking players as well that should be hungry for another go in Italy, Alex, like, your Verdis and your Ricardo Rodriguez, who was very disappointing at Milan. But I'm happy to move right into the conversation about Roma because I think Sassuolo, will be thereabouts and will cause more damage than they do to themselves because they're always a tough opponent to play against. And I think Cagliari as well might be able to survive the drop again, although I'm more than happy to have Raja Nainggolan back, as I'm sure you are as well, but we'll get to that soon. In terms of Roma, Dzeko going out is a huge, huge blow for me because I feel like he really was the leader of that place after De Rossi left. And they're losing a huge chunk of their identity with Kolarov and Dzeko going out. So I hope that for the fans after losing Zaniolo, unfortunately, that the expectations, Alex, are low because I really do think that Roma are heading for a pretty rough season. They have had a few players come in, Vertut from Fiorentina, one Luca Mancini as well. And, they have nailed down Marash Kumbula, much to the disliking of Inter fans and Lazio fans as well. Pedro has come in from Chelsea. So they've still added a few names to the board, but it's not looking great for them. I'm not too sure if Henrik Mkhitaryan is lining up for this season. Can you check me on that, Alex?
No, he is. I think they made that permanent. So he was looking really good at the end of the year. So I think he's going to be one of their better players.
Yeah, I would agree there as well. So good for them to hang on to a couple of players. But for Dzeko, as Alex said, it's a really good fee that they've received. 16 million for a 34-year-old forward in Italy is pretty astronomical. And it was surprising to see Juventus make that purchase. But Dzeko is a player that could be utilized very, very well from Juventus because he's got that real gladiator-like winning mentality. But I'll definitely echo what Alex has said in the sense that I don't expect Roma to be sniffing anywhere near the Champions League spots, let alone those Europa League spots, which brings us to what, in my opinion, mate, really is the toughest season of Serie A to call that I can remember almost as a fan. You almost can't predict it from top to bottom. And Now we're really going to get into the nitty gritty of it. And I'm so sorry, but you're the guest, so you are going to have to go first before I give my predictions from the Europa League backwards. But I'm just going to say before I start, it's really hard to go from 3 to 8, man. It really is.
So do you want me to go from do you want me to go from 1 to 6, from 3 to 8? Where did you want me to start from?
That's all up to you, man. I don't really mind.
Well, I'm going to go I mean, if you don't mind me doing the big reveal of my Scudetto winner and working from there, I can give you really probably my top 8 if you want to hear it.
Perfect. Let's go from that.
So, as much as it pains me to say it as an Interista, and I really hope I'm wrong on this, I am going to give the nod to Juventus to win a 10th straight Scudetto. And it's certainly not because I think that they're head and shoulders the best team in Italy. And I know that the big question mark is going to be with Andrea Pirlo's appointment having no experience whatsoever. I mean, he just got his coaching badge earlier this week. Passed his thesis. So there's really, for one of the great Italian midfielders of all time, there's no coaching history for him. So I know he's a question mark, whereas Conte with Inter is not a question mark. I mean, aside from his weird outbursts, you tend to know what to expect from him on the touchline. But I think the reason why I give the advantage to Juventus is not only do I think that with the squads are closer than they've been in a long time between Juve and Inter, but I still give Juve the slight edge, and I also give them the edge with their championship experience with Scudetti. So it's really me picking Juventus has more to do with the squad and the players than it does with the coaching. I just don't think that Pirlo is enough of a minus to take them out of the Scudetto conversation. He might end up being an upgrade over Sarri, who just really, I think, struggled to keep that locker room on his side last year. So I do give the slight edge to Juve with the Scudetto. I think it's going to be a close race, and I will go with Inter as my number 2. And, of course, I hope they can compete. I hope they can win it. I just think that they are, I think Juve is just going to be a little bit more cynical when it comes to closing out some of the tougher games, and we may see a little bit of Pazza Inter. So I've got Juve 1, Inter 2. I'm going to take a leap of faith and say that Napoli is going to really improve from their disappointing season this past year. Not only did they have a very positive transfer window, bringing in players like Osimhen and Petagna and Ramani on the back line, but, they really seemed to start clicking later in the season under Gattuso, who, of course, didn't start the year there. It was Ancelotti. And, they had the mutiny, the whole disaster there in Napoli. And then Gattuso really kind of gradually cleaned out the mess throughout the year. So I think Napoli is going to be back in a Champions League spot. I have Napoli at number 3, and I feel pretty confident about that top 3. It gets muddy for me after number 3. And this is where I could see a lot of variables. It's really tough. Now, I'm going to take another leap of faith at the number 4 spot and say that Milan is going to break their long Champions League drought and collect the 4th spot and return to Champions League. And a lot of this is based on the positive way that they finished the year. I mean, after the restart in Serie A, no one collected more points than Milan. They were, technically the hottest team in Serie A. Yeah, I think that the stability of keeping Pioli. Now, I know that us Interisti don't rate Pioli that highly, but he was doing a nice job with this group. And so I think that keeping Pioli rather than completely blowing it up and bringing in Ragnick like they were talking about doing is probably for the best, at least for this year, for the continuity, especially with a short off season. Re-signing Zlatan, I think, was big for them. Signing Tonali, although, Tonali, I think, is more of a long-term signing than a short-term signing. I don't think he's going to be a huge difference maker year one, but I think he can help them year one. I think Brahim Diaz, on loan from Real Madrid, is a guy who can really help them this year. And I think they're going to continue some of the positive momentum that they had last season. So I actually see Milan sneaking into the top 4. But this is really tough for me because, Anthony, from my 4, 5, and 6, I could really see these 3 teams finishing in any order, with Milan at my number 4. Then I have Lazio at number 5, just missing out on Champions League. And part of that is because I think pretty highly of Milan's project. But another part of that is Lazio's magical run this past season, for as well as they played, it did feel a little bit fluky. Now, I don't mean a poor squad by any stretch of the imagination. They an excellent starting 11. I think they've even added some quality depth in this transfer window. But I do think that was just one of those magical seasons for Lazio with all the penalties they received, with a lot of the late comebacks that they had. I mean, how many times did they get game winners in extra time? I just don't know if that's sustainable over 2 seasons. So I think it's going to be really a fight for the 4th, 5th, and 6th spots. But I'm just thinking Lazio takes a slight step back and just misses out on Champions League qualification. And then my number 6 is one that I really feel guilty about, right? Because Atalanta, I don't know. Atalanta is another one. They've been punching so high above their weight for the past 2 years. You almost feel like at some point the other shoe is going to drop from Cinderella. I think Atalanta proved a lot of doubters wrong with the way that they were able to, maintain such a high level in Serie A, despite also maintaining a high level in Champions League. So I don't know. I feel like I'm disrespecting Atalanta by having them at number 6, but just for me, the margins for 4, 5, and 6 are so hard. I had drawn up my top 7 before the Dzeko move. So I had penciled in Roma for my number 7 spot, and I'll keep them there, even though I question Roma a little bit. I could even see potentially Sassuolo being a 7th place team this year, but I'm going to stick with Roma at 7, maybe consider Sassuolo 8 and Fiorentina 9. So that's how I see the front end of the table in Serie A.
Well said, man. Thank you so much for that. I thought for a second we were going to have an identical prediction, but then it took a little bit of a left turn around that 4, 5, 6 mark, as I expected it to.
Yeah.
But a lot of what you've said, man, I would completely agree, and especially about the top. So, as another Inter fan, wow, this is going to sound really good as an Inter Worldwide podcast. Hey, two Interistas predicting Juventus to beat us to the Scudetto this season, and it's just that. For me, it's all about winning the games that need to be won. And I remember we spoke at the start of last season, and Inter did a great job of winning those games under Conte in the first half of the season that, we may have slipped up with Spalletti or our other managers before that. We started taking 3 points from Cagliari, from Udinese, from Sassuolo, from our bogey sides. The back end of the season, we saw a little bit of Pazza Inter again dropping points to those bogey sides. And my Inter heart and Inter brain just can't help but feel that we might just see that again this season, because I need to be proven otherwise. I need to know that we're not going to drop these points, that Juventus are going to definitely win. Juventus might not be able to get 3 points against some of the bigger sides. They might lose a game here and there. But when push comes to shove, they will most likely dispose of every team in the bottom half of the table. They might not even deserve the points. They're just going to get it done. And when you take into account the signing of Dzeko, who's another one of those players with that, the game isn't over until the 96th, 97th minute. Well, you're at the right club now for that. He will do very, very well there, in my opinion. And although 16 million is a lot and it's not very Agnelli Juventus-like of a purchase, I think they know what they're doing with that purchase, and it just might be the purchase that gets them over the line, because with supporting of Ronaldo, Dybala, Kulusevski now as well, it's just hard to see them being toppled. In terms of us, like I said, Alex, I want to see us put the points away that need to be put. I want this to be Conte's season. It's supposed to be Conte's season, supposed to be the season that he takes the league by the scruff of the neck and really does what he does best. But once again, it has to be proven. I'm really excited about our acquisitions so far in terms of Achraf Hakimi. I think that because we signed him so under the radar, it's not getting the attention it fully deserves. But at the end of the day, it does look like Arturo Vidal is coming in as well. So before I move on to my 3 to 6, I'm just going to go off the map a bit. Alex, what are your thoughts on Arturo Vidal coming in? Because we are both very big vocal fans of Sandro Tonali, and losing him to Milan did hurt a fair bit. But do you respect the decision of the club to basically back Conte for this season and say, you know what, you want your man, we'll get you your man?
Yeah, honestly, I was a little bit greedy. I really wanted them both, and this was before we knew that the transfer strategy was changing, and also a month ago we didn't really, I didn't really think we grasped how much the transfer market would be impacted by COVID-19. I think we just kind of assumed we would see the same free spending sooning that we saw in the previous couple of transfer windows. And it's not our fault because the media kept, linking Inter to all these expensive players. Even Messi, was linked to Inter by the media as recently as a few weeks ago. So it's not really our fault for having the wrong idea. So I honestly, I wanted both. Like I could have seen bringing in Arturo Vidal on a low fee or a free transfer and investing in Tonali. So, I mean, if you ask me if I can respect choosing Vidal over Tonali, not really. But if I can separate my view on Vidal from my view on Tonali, if I just view them as two separate deals and two separate players in a vacuum, yeah, I like the Vidal addition. He can absolutely help in the short term. I watched him play enough this past season, including when he came on against Inter in their first meeting in Champions League this past year. He came on in the second half, completely changed the complexion of the game, and really helped Barcelona sink Inter. I saw him make that impact a handful of times with Barca over the past season, let alone the past couple of seasons. And this is a Conte player. I mean, he and Conte have the history at Juventus. They have the rapport together. Conte knows he can get the best out of Vidal. Vidal knows what it means to be in a Conte formation. So I think it's a very, very good thing for Inter. It's been quite a saga because for the past couple of weeks, we've been hearing reports that this was hours away from being finalized, and then hours have turned into days, turned into weeks. But it looks like, with Diego Godin on his way to Cagliari, that's opened up the spot for Arturo Vidal, and I really like Inter's midfield. I mean, aside from my disappointment that the Tonali deal didn't get done, and it looks like Brozovic is staying, and I'm okay with that. I love Barella, as anyone should. I rate Christian Eriksen. I know that maybe Antonio Conte doesn't, but I really like what Eriksen adds. If Stefano Sensi can stay somewhat healthy, he's an unbelievable player. It looks like Raja Nainggolan is going to be back on the squad. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about him, but I certainly think he can help, and I think Vidal can give a big boost. So if you look at it in terms of the names I've just mentioned, this is one of the top 2 or 3 midfields in Serie A.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a tiny bit more about Nainggolan before we move on. I, for one, am very, very happy to see him stay because, what an absolute waste in terms of expectations for such an absolute warrior in midfield. We were so happy to get this guy. And I know that you bought yourself a jersey and many other Inter fans I know bought themselves a jersey. So how do you feel, Alex, about being able to bust out that Raja Nainggolan jersey again?
Yeah, and I'm also happy that it looks like he's still going to be wearing the number 14 because I think there had been rumors of a number change, but he was when he lined up for the friendly, he was wearing 14, so I can keep my 14 jersey that I bought. But no, in all seriousness, I'm happy that he's going to get a chance to play for Conte because this is a player that Conte wanted to sign when he was with Chelsea, and I look back at the way things went down last year, shortly after Conte arrived. I think he maybe coached Nainggolan in 1 or 2 friendlies, and then the deal with Cagliari happened. But I think that was more of a Beppe Marotta move. I think that Conte would have been more than happy to have Nainggolan in his squad, but I think the decision to send Nainggolan away was made before Conte arrived. I think it goes back to that, almost 2 years ago now, that voicemail, that WhatsApp message that got leaked that he sent to his friend on Christmas Day about how he was, essentially going to make so much chaos at Inter on purpose because he wanted to be sent back to Roma. I think that really rubbed Inter management the wrong way, and they took the first chance to get rid of the guy. But as far as what he can add in terms of the grinta, in terms of the physicality, the class, the goal scoring, the finishing, I'm really excited to see what he can do under Conte. And I know that we've seen, a guy like Borja Valero go out the door. I'm sorry, I'm he's been a good squad player, but the guy's 57 years old. I certainly don't mind I certainly don't mind reintegrating Rajan Angolan, and if he can stay healthy, because the big issue that he had with the season he did spend with Inter in 2018, 2019 was he just had some trouble staying on the pitch, had a lot of injuries. So hopefully Pintus doesn't run him completely into the ground, and he can, be serviceable for a number of matches this year.
Absolutely. I would agree with everything. No need to even make a further comment. I'll dive into that real impossible curve. I'm really happy to hear you say Napoli, because I've got Napoli down as well. I really think Gennaro Gattuso was underrated by Milan. I still think that, even though they're looking a little bit fresher now, they're still kind of licking their wounds of that really bad decision to send him out. Full kudos and full big ups to Gattuso for getting Napoli back on the map last season, at the back end last season. I think winning that Coppa Italia is going to be a huge factor propelling them forward. It's just such a real nice extrinsic motivator getting that piece of silverware for the club. They've added a few good players as well. I actually do think that they are going to be able to crack back into that top four. And, more so, they really only had last season was a bad season. I think that a lot of fans are expecting them to stay around that 5th, 6th, maybe even 7th position. But the way I feel, it really was only one bad season for Napoli. And I actually think Gattuso is going to be able to get them back up there again. 4th and the last Champions League spot, it's going to Lazio for me, Alex. But I would say it again, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It could really be any order. I would really say 4th place Lazio, only for the sheer fact of continuity and that the side will be familiar. And if we're sitting celebrating at the end of the season, Alex, because Inter has won the Scudetto, it will be because of that reason, because of the continuity of the tactical implementation of Conte and the fact that they were playing so regularly with each other towards the back end of the season. Lazio has had an identity for a while now where, Simone Inzaghi has got that team oiled pretty well. And I just think that by being able to hold on to some of their big key players, which they may not have been able to do if COVID didn't roll around, with your Milinkovic-Savic's and Ciro Immobile as well, but he did sign a new contract. And I just think that they'll still be thereabouts. I don't think they're going to drop off like people think. I'll definitely agree with you in the sense that last season they did have a lot of calls go their way, especially into those dying minutes of the match. But the way football's going in 2020, in my opinion, these long injury times because of stoppages throughout the matches, that's only going to get worse and worse. I fear that we're moving into a season where we're going to start seeing triple digits on that clock more than once. And that would be a disaster for me. But with the way that VAR doesn't look like to be changing any of its rules in Italy as well, we're going to keep seeing astronomical amounts of penalties given. So these are the modern rules, and adapt with it or get left behind. And I don't think Lazio will get left behind. But then again, what do I know? Because how do you rule out Atalanta? How? But for the only reason I is because the same reason you did. Surely maybe the bubble has burst a little bit. That last goal, Alex, against PSG was a dagger to the heart. I don't know if they can recover from that. That's something that I'm not too sure the club can recover from in terms of just motivating that side to come back. I'm really glad to see that Josip Ilicic is back for this season, but with the way his personal life is going as well, and the inconsistency and injury to Duvan Zapata, who is a player I rate very highly, I'm not 100% sure they're going to be able to replicate the momentum, which is what really got them over the line the last couple of seasons, because they did drop a couple of games here and there, a few points. But what Atalanta was able to do really well under Gasperini was get a little bit of momentum and carry that forward as a train force of momentum. I'm not too sure they'll be able to do that this time around. Their season in the Champions League last season was a fairy tale, but this season it now comes with extra responsibility of being able to back it up again. I just think that this season might be a season where Atalanta does regress only because they set the bar at such a great level this season that just passed. Now, the next one, they probably will come fourth, Milan, to be honest, Alex. I just don't think I can do it. I just don't think I can say it myself.
Well, and you know what? I think part of the problem is that I follow enough Milanisti on Twitter that I see so many, and maybe they'll end up in 8th place, but I see so many Milanisti already claiming a 2021 Scudetto, that if I split the difference between 8th place and 1st place, they come in around 4th, because I've never met a bunch of more delusional fans, and I love these guys to death. I have personal friends who are Milanisti, but they're all expecting to be holding like 5-6 trophies this year. It's crazy.
Oh, that's all I've seen as well, man. That's all I've seen as well. But to be fair, as you said, they've got some good players that have come in as well. I'm still very dirty at losing Tonali, but that kid's going to get a better run under Pioli than he would have under Conte. It'll be left to see his exact impact, but I think the signing of Brahim Diaz is a good one as well. Getting a little bit of money for Andre Silva in order to permanently sign Ante Rebic, which I know for a fact wasn't in the club's original plan when he came there. Every time he scored a goal and the camera would cut to their stands, all you would see is their directors would have this look on their face like, oh shit, he scored again. Oh shit, he scored again. Oh god damn, we really got to buy this guy now. But they're getting rid of some of the dead weight as well. And I think it is going to come down to Milan being able to ride a lot of their luck. But I do feel like of all the teams, Alex, they are the ones that are one bad fragile injury or one bad mistake or one bad issue away from going tits up. I don't think they necessarily have the backbone or the reserves, the squad, the manager with the charisma. Maldini is doing a great job, but he's still very fresh in his role as well. And the fact that you take in that they were so close to making such a huge transition, club and identity-wise, and that last minute did the U-turn, still tells me that, they're really just banking on themselves and banking on, a little bit of a dream to continue this on. I do think they're still a little bit fragile. Is that what you think would you agree with, in a sense, about Milan as well?
Yeah, I think that's why, even in my kind of generous pick, I have them sneaking into the 4th spot and not doing even better than that, because I think on Milan's best day, and we saw that a couple of times, I mean, they humiliated Juventus. I think they also beat up Lazio pretty badly, if I remember correctly, after the pandemic. So I think we saw what Milan is capable of. But to your point, when you have a squad that certainly doesn't have the depth of a Juve or an Inter, and you do have, outside of Zlatan, who's really, I mean, he may not be officially their captain, but I think that he's really the emotional leader of that group, and his experience is tremendous. But you don't have a wealth of championship experience on that side, and so I think for Milan, when they're at their best, you're going to see them really put in some impressive performances. But I think whenever you have a squad that lacks depth and lacks experience, you're going to have a few losing streaks. And at the end of the day, that's going to come back to bite them in the standings. It's why I don't see them competing for a Scudetto, because they're just not going to be able to survive the grind, through 38 match days. Plus, I mean, they'll be, I don't know how deep they're going to go in Europa League, but they do have that competition. And then you'll bring Coppa Italia into play. So I just don't really see Milan being able to survive the attrition in the same way that a Juve and an Inter will be. And that's why I see them maybe sneaking into a Champions League spot, because they're probably going to have a couple of losing streaks and a few winning streaks throughout the year. I just can't really see them consistently racking up points throughout the season.
Yeah, well said, Alex. I'm conscious of time for you, so we're going to pretty much finish there with just one last thing. Let's talk a little bit about who you think will be the Capocannonieri, the best signing and the worst signing. I'll start with this one, because I've kind of thrown you under the bus with this podcast. For me, I reckon big Romelu Lukaku is getting the title this season, man, of Capocannonieri. He is hungry as, and you know what I love about Big Rom, man? He can have a real shitty game for 88 minutes, have a touch that goes into the stands. But you know what? He's going to keep going until minute 94 to get that goal. And he will get that goal more times than not. So I reckon Lukaku is going to be the top scorer. Maybe Cristiano Ronaldo, but I don't think it will be Immobile again. I think it will be Lukaku. For me, the best signing of the season, look, it really could go either way. Something tells me that if we have an amazing season, it's probably going to be Hakimi. If Napoli do as well as we say, Alex, it could be Osimhen, because he's brilliant. But will he be able to adapt straight away and transcend that amazing characteristics that he has? Remains to be seen. if Juventus manage to win the Scudetto, I can almost guarantee you right now, Edin Dzeko's probably got them 12 to 15 points that season, and that's going to be the signing of the season. For me, the worst signing of the season is going to be Milik because...
we are so on the same page. It's not even funny. Continue.
Dude, he at 34 years old, Dzeko is still 10 times the player Milik is. And that's probably what the worst thing that's going to happen to Roma. He's just very, very limited in his all-around ability as a striker. And, the whole concept of him being a target man is pretty much phased out in many of the leagues. And I just don't think he'll have much of an impact at all. I didn't rate him much at Napoli. And I think like many other signings that go to Roma, I think Roma have still got a lot of problems behind the scenes, more than I know about, that anybody knows about really. But I look at the way that they carry on injuries and just a lot of the signings that have been misses for them over the years. Milik is just going to be a Patrick Schick all over again, to be honest. So that's my opinion. What about yours, Alex?
Yeah, so I'll give my logic, but we're in unison on all three of those picks. And if anyone thinks I'm cheating off your paper, I am on record saying this earlier this week. As far as my capocannoniere goes, I feel pretty confident it's going to be Romelu Lukaku this year. When I was debating how this was going to go, the first thing that I considered was, can I see Ciro Immobile repeating? He really is such a focal point at Lazio, and there's consistency with that squad. He doesn't have to learn a new coach's formation. Inzaghi is still there. His teammates, by and large, are all still there from this past season. So I think that Ciro is going to have another big year, but to repeat as capocannoniere is so tough because, and he just set the record this past year, tied the record with 36 goals. He's certainly not going to do that 2 years in a row, but even to repeat 2 straight years as capocannoniere is so difficult because to score that many goals, so many things have to go right for 2 straight years when it comes to, being healthy and available for the better part of the year. Because if you miss a handful of games, you're not winning that award. For your team to click 2 years in a row the way that they did, because Lazio were scoring a ton of goals and performing well and winning a bunch of matches. So with me seeing them taking a slight step back in the standings, I can also see Ciro taking a slight step back with the goal scoring. And, 36 goals, 14 of those were on penalties. I don't think he's going to have that many opportunities from the spot this coming season. So I think he's going to take a little bit of a dip. And on the flip side of that, why I think there's so much momentum for my capocannoniere pick and Romelu Lukaku is second year in Serie A. He learned a new league last year, and he still scored, 24, 25 Serie A goals? So something like that. So I think he's going to be in the 30 range just in Serie A this year, somewhere around 29, 30, because there's no longer going to be the adjusting period to Serie A is over. Second season now with his teammates in Conte's formation. He's thrived so much under Conte, and knock on wood, Lukaku is not the type of player who we see miss a lot of time because he's the farthest thing from fragile. He's like a thoroughbred horse out there. So I think he's going to be consistently available. I hope Conte doesn't play him too much. I hope Conte gives him a break, every now and then. But I could see Lukaku taking it. And obviously Cristiano Ronaldo is always going to be in the mix. But I think this year we might see Dybala take away a few more goals than he did this past season. We may see Kulusevski taking away some goals. Edin Dzeko has just arrived. Now, I think the Dzeko thing might even help Ronaldo score more, or it might take goals away from him. I think they're going to link up very well together, but I think there are going to be so many scoring options up front for Juve that it might take a little bit away from Cristiano, who is, he's not getting any younger. So, no, I think that this is the season of Lukaku. As far as the best signing, I'm pretty confident it's going to be Hakimi, which, wow, I'm giving a lot of praise to Inter here. Figure that. But no, I think it's going to be Hakimi because we've seen him perform at a world-class level with Borussia Dortmund. Like there's no question to what he can do. Whereas Osimhen is, a highly touted signing coming in, but he hasn't done it in a top league yet. So he's a little bit less proven. It's a little bit more of a very expensive, but a little bit more of a prospect signing for Napoli. So I really have no reason to believe that Hakimi is going to be anything less than world class for Inter this season. So I could see that being the best signing. And I tend to agree with you on Milik. I think that he's going to be probably the worst signing for all the reasons you stated. I will throw one wild card at you though. If it's not Milik to be the worst signing, I kind of wonder, depending on how much he plays, Kolarov could be in that mix. Now, I love what he brings as a set piece specialist. He's really going to add something for the free kicks for Inter. But if we see Kolarov at his age and his speed or lack thereof at this point, really start a lot of games at, let's say, left center back, where he'll be more on more of a defensive island. I think we'll see him play both left wing back and left center back. But if he ends up having to play a lot of games at left center back, I think he could become a defensive liability. So hopefully the Kolarov thing doesn't backfire, because I love him as a free kick taker. I worry about him a little bit when it comes to staying with forwards and not making defensive errors and not getting too many yellow cards and red cards throughout the season. So I'm hoping that it ends up being Milik as the worst signing, because I don't want it to be anyone on Inter.
Yeah, that's for sure, man. Alex, I just want to thank you for coming on to Inter Worldwide. I'm sure our predictions will look stupid many times throughout the season, maybe even at the end as well. But I'm pretty sure it's October 5th, the Mercato closes. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Man, we still got 2 weeks. Anything can happen in that time, man. So we're definitely set for another crazy ride for the next 2 weeks. And then, when the season's pretty much set to start tomorrow, but still plenty to take into account. I'm sure a lot of clubs will change their minds, a lot of presidents, a lot of managers. So, everything will remain to be found out when we do start kicking those footballs around. Alex Donno, thank you so much. And please, if you haven't already, everybody check out the Cultural Connection podcast with he and the crazy Jerry Mancini. It really is raw and fantastic. Thanks again, Alex.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Not a problem. And from all of us here at Inter Worldwide, Forza Inter. Ciao, ragazzi.